Hello everyone, and welcome to the third development vlog of turning episode 1 of my OC project into a visual novel. I started out by creating the first shot of scene 3 by using the exterior set of Grainbush Cafe that I had already created last episode, which you can go watch if you haven't already, if you're interested in 3D modelling and texturing and all that. I drew Erin standing on the pavement, along with a civilian just to make the environment not feel as empty. And I also played around with the colour palette in Krita and DaVinci Resolve to fit the dusk colours. For shot 2, I reused the Nutroport scene that I also created in the last devlog. The shot features Erin walking down the street, and I drew in some more civilians, even adding one in the foreground to add some more depth, and to make Erin feel small. Shot 3 has multiple panels of Erin walking and then stopping in their tracks. This shot was really simple to draw. I just drew Erin's legs on different layers, so I could use a transform tool to move Erin's foot around and redraw a couple of lines. For the background, I also just took a zoomed in render of the building that you see in scene 2, and added some shadows on the pavement to make Erin feel like they're actually in the environment. Shot 4 has Erin clenching their fist as they cry. The colours were a little tricky to get right, as I noticed that a lot of these scenes so far are very warm in their colour palette, so making the sun go down as the sky transitions into the night helped me add more cooler hues, as well as match the emotions that Erin is feeling in this scene. Shot 5 is the beginning of a flashback sequence between a much younger Erin and their dad, which takes place in their dad's office. As I mentioned last devlog, I wanted to create a 360 camera pan animation, because I like making myself suffer. Well, actually, when I was originally storyboarding this scene, I wanted to make Erin revealing their powers to their dad really dramatic and impactful. Since their power is to manipulate air currents, I thought about how things in the room could swirl around Erin like a tornado to visually convey their power and how devastating and dangerous it actually can be whenever Erin has trouble controlling the intensity of their emotions, which when Erin gets extremely upset and or devastated, they can literally create a storm within the environment surrounding them. Anyways, more on this animated shot a little later. Basically the point that I'm getting at is that because Cal's office is going to be seen from all of these different points of view, I decided to spend 2 days creating a 3D model of it. 1 day for modelling, and the next for UV unwrapping and texture painting, because everything you see here is texture painted by hand. 3D modelling Cal's office allowed me to put more thought into what sort of things he would have in his workspace. He's a graphic designer, so he has a big desk to work with, a laptop, a calendar, and post-it notes to keep track of clients and different jobs he has to do for them. Some drawers where he would keep some of his tools, a gigantic box full of different coloured paper, a printer, and a guillotine, which he makes an off-the-cuff comment about it injuring his hand in the actual series. Cal also likes to keep artificial plants in his room, and he has some pictures around in his office which I had to painstakingly draw out. One of my favourites is of this picture of Emery and Cal getting married. It was really interesting trying to think about what sort of outfits that they would wear. I also really liked adding in the cell shading and lighting for this piece. Overall, hopefully this room will add a bit more depth to Cal's character. Now that Cal's office is modelled, which I'll be using as backgrounds for this scene, let's talk about each shot I worked on in chronological order. The establishing shot of Cal's office is one scene in the flashback and one scene in the present day that I will use later on in the visual novel. I wanted to use colours to show how Erin sees their dad, when as a child Erin saw Cal as this loving, warm and whimsical figure in their life, but when Cal discovered Erin to be powerful, he became more cold, distant and neglectful during the present day. I also adjusted some of Erin's dialogue during Emery's introduction, which you'll probably see in the next devlog, where Erin expresses more bitter feelings towards Cal, and Emery tries to keep her child and husband together. It's crazy that originally Emery and Caleb were barely in the plot of One of the Powerful. They appeared in the first episode, and then here and there in later ones, and that was it. Since I completely rewrote the plot, these two characters are much more important, and both have their moments to shine. The next scene is of Erin peeking through the door to see their dad working away. For this, I actually refined young Erin's design here a little, mainly their hair, which I wanted to be kept shoulder length, not too long or too short. I felt like if I changed too much, Erin would probably start to look not like, well, Erin, so I wanted to ensure the readability of their younger design. And I also feel like it may mess with Erin psychologically later on in the story. I know that sounds extremely weird, but trust me, it will make sense one day. The next CG sequence is of Cal standing up abruptly, totally not freaking out internally about Erin mentioning that they can do magic. That is so silly, as he walks over to the shelf area of his desk. This shot, especially the background, would have taken me a very long time, but thankfully due to the 3D model, the progress of this shot was sped up a lot. Still took me a while to add some minor overpainting along with drawing the characters on top, then the color grading, which I made this very soft pastel pink color and took the DaVinci Resolve export back into Krita to emphasize the cooler hues of Eren and Cal's hair. There is also this scene of when Eren activates their powers and some papers fly off Cal's desk, which I had to draw and render, using the stacks of paper that I 3D modeled in Blender as a base to work from. This was a very fun thing to do first thing in the morning, rendering paper. Yeah, just what I always wanted to do. Now it's time to talk about the animated shot that I mentioned earlier on. I put 2 planes in the office set, one representing Cal and the other being Eren. Then I animated the camera around Eren, and this camera pan took so much more longer to animate than I originally intended. However, I finally got there after enough struggling. Then I quickly drew some rough keyframes of Eren and Cal in Clip Studio Paint. I'm slowly drawing some keyframes and breakdowns of Eren and Cal. Since this scene is very complex, I'm going to be chipping away at it over time. In the near future for this shot, I want to animate some furniture or objects such as Cal's chair flying around Eren, which would spring Cal into action to stop Eren from nearly unintentionally hurting themselves. This scene still has a long way to go before being finished, however I will update you all on its progress. There is a scene I added when writing the descriptive text of this scene where Cal is resisting against Eren's powers, as his feet slowly get sucked towards them like a black hole. And I wanted to draw that, but sketching out this scene took me a couple of tries, as I was weirdly struggling to translate what I saw in my head onto my drawing tablet, but I got there in the end. I don't know if I've mentioned it too often, but I would consider myself to have quite an overactive imagination, especially when it comes to my characters. Like, I can visualize fully animated scenes like I'm watching a TV show all in my head, imagining the characters in all sorts of different scenarios, mainly scenes that I can't talk about during this point in time due to huge spoilers. I often find myself completely absorbed in my own little world, which has been the case ever since I was a child. I used to, and I'm still very bad for daydreaming. I am very much a visual person, which is why I really like the visual novel format. The following CG is of Cal catching Eren. When adapting this to the visual novel format, I made this scene a lot more dramatic than originally intended. In the storyboards, Eren's air manipulation power wasn't nearly as devastating for this scene, but then I thought, well, if paper will swirl around Eren, then how about some furniture? Which kinda shows how dangerous Eren can be, and give Cal a more justified reaction to, everything. So Cal was originally meant to slide on the ground and catch Eren, who was just floating midair. But since I had the idea of once Eren's powers cut out, objects would then violently crash down, I don't think this original pose Cal is drawn in fully conveys the intensity of the situation. But I wanted to keep the idea of this panel, just draw Cal more crouched, like he's trying to shield Eren with his body from their own abilities. I also tilted the background and the characters at an angle to make this feel uneasy and unbalanced, compared to the previous shots in the scene that were just straight in their composition. And to also symbolise that from this moment onwards, Eren and Cal's relationship goes downhill. Our last shot of today is of Eren looking up at Cal. His face is hidden to add some mystery. How fun. You will see the aftermath of this scene someday, so you will find out how Emery reacted to Eren being a powerful in a place that would actively hunt them and their parents if it ever got out. I don't have too much to say about this scene that I haven't already said about the other shots. 3D background, drawing Eren, adding some compositing and color grading, so I am going to ramble for a little bit. Last year, I participated in my first ever art fight, which I had a lot of fun with, and this year I'll be joining in again. But I want to add some more characters both from One of the Powerful and the short film that I animated in 2 months last year, Breakthrough. So I'll have to make some more references and animated icons of the characters. It might not be next video, but at some point in the near future, would you guys be interested in seeing some art fight prep? It's going to be very strange drawing the Breakthrough characters again. I haven't touched them since the deadline of the film back in September, and I still have some odd feelings towards them, as working in such a crunch time on that project still has kinda stuck with me. Their designs are so ingrained in my mind that I could probably redraw them based on my memory alone without any references. I still have some extremely complicated feelings towards Breakthrough, but I would like to revisit the project again after One of the Powerful is over with, as there are some aspects that I do like about the project, it just needs some fleshing out. So yeah, art fight prep video in the future. And that is the flashback scene completed. Apart from the animated shot, which I mentioned will take a little bit of time to work on, but I shall chip away at it. I'm beyond excited to finish it, and if I do it justice, it'll be one of my favourite scenes that I've potentially ever animated so far. This scene that I worked on today is one of the more CG heavy scenes of episode 1. As each episode progresses, which you'll see with episode 1 too now that I think about it, the visual novel will progress from having lots of CGs and cutscenes with little sprites, to being more character sprite focused than CGs and animated cutscenes, which will be used sparingly. Drawing out all these CGs is a lot of work, and it's a very slow process. And I only have one body, which has unfortunately been flaring up in pain a bit more lately, as I'm really excited to work on the project. This is like the happiest I have felt working on a project in such a long time. I love this project so much, you have no idea. But because I'm working on it so obsessively, my body is kind of in pain a lot when I sit at my desk. Which is why this devlog got delayed a little bit, and I was worried I didn't make enough to justify a devlog. So I think lessening the workload until absolutely necessary is the best course of action, aka focusing more on character sprites but then switching to animated cutscenes or CGs when the scene really needs it, and of course trying not to work on it every waking moment. This project is gigantic, and I fear my body will actually crumble into dust one of these days. However, aside from all the pain, I had a lot of fun working on this scene. And as I mentioned earlier, I am so happy working on this project. I feel like it's just a mix of working on a new medium I haven't really experimented with much before, being visual novels. I've never made a full-on visual novel before, only the test scene between Suki and Kenichi. And then I'm mixing in things that I'm already familiar with, such as, animation, and kind of framing the CGs as kind of like an animatic or an animated scene. And so I have a lot of fun really meshing these mediums together, and I hope you guys look forward to episode 1, and I hope you also like hearing about the behind the scenes of the making the project as well. I hope it's kind of interesting to hear. But anyway, thank you guys for listening along. Until next time.